For more on this, we're going to bring in Rajan Menon. He's the director of the Grand Strategy Program and Defense Priorities and Emeritus Professor of International Relations at the City College of New York. And we have reached him today in North Sutton, New Hampshire. Welcome back to the Rundown.
Hello, Hillary. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm hoping we can start with the significance of this deal. How significant, how important is this?
It's very significant. So just a couple of numbers. 29% of the world's wheat exports are accounted for by Ukraine and Russia. 40% of those exports go to the Middle East and Africa. 70% of Egypt's wheat imports come from these two countries. And so it is critically important that the exports from both countries be freed up, not just of wheat, but also of corn and sunflower oil, rapeseed, commodities in which these are major producers and exporters.
And we were just hearing there from my colleague Abby that, this is just a small fraction of what would usually be coming out of Ukraine. Do you think that we're going to see a big difference in global food prices in some of those countries that need these shipments the most?
Well, recently, food prices have been coming down, and if the flow out of Ukraine and Russia continues, they will come down further. But bear in mind that the shipments out of Ukraine and Russia are not the only reason. Food prices have crept up for other reasons. For instance, the price of oil has gone up substantially, as you know, since the war began, and oil prices are baked into food prices, for example, through transportation of the food from the producer to the destination, and also in the manufacture of fertilizers. So it's going to take some doing. The other thing to be mindful of is whether the peace holds up. Right after the deal was signed on July 22nd, there was a strike on the Ukrainian port of Odessa, from where the ship sailed today. And then yesterday, there was another strike on a port just to the east, Mykolaiv. If that continues, that is, the strikes continues, ship captains and insurers are going to be very nervous about sending their ships in to get grain and fetch it and bring it out.
So on that note then, assuming that this deal does hold, of course, there have been past deals, whether we're talking about humanitarian corridors or whatnot, that did not. What would be in this for Russia? Why would it be in their interest to try and continue to honor the agreement?
Well, Russia and Ukraine are both big grain exporters of wheat and corn and other things that I mentioned. So there's a cash flow problem. Now, you might say, or someone listening to us might ask, what about the sanctions? The sanctions have not applied to Russian food exports deliberately so as not to stoke a world food crisis. So to the extent that this deal works out, there's also something to gain for Russia as well.
Okay, and what about for Ukraine here? I would have to imagine that these are going to be some really valuable dollars that will flow into Ukraine as these grain shipments flow out.
Without question. So Ukraine's budget deficit, that is the difference between revenue and expenditures per month, is $5 billion. That's over $60 billion thereabouts a year. It has huge reconstruction costs awaiting it. And so a cash flow from grain exports is very, very critical to Ukraine, no question about it. And one other thing, when farmers bring in the current harvest, they need somewhere to store it. And if you have 27 million tons, or whatever the precise number is, in holding bays in ports, then there's no place to put the new grain, which will rot.
And just finally here, I've got about 30 seconds left, but what about Turkey? Turkey has helped to broker this deal. It sort of help us understand the importance of Turkey in all of this.
Turkey is very important. It is viewed by both sides as a relatively friendly power. Turkey, along with the UN, brokered a deal. They've set up something called the Joint Coordination Committee. Turkey is a member, the UN is a member, Russia and Ukraine are a member, and they are supposed to they're supposed to exercise oversight over this agreement on the shipment of grain.
Rajan, I want to thank you for all of this, for your insights. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Hillary.
Rajan Menon is the director of the Grand Strategy Program at Defense Priorities and Emeritus Professor of International Relations at the City College of New York. And he joined us today from North Sutton, New Hampshire.